Can comedy go too far? Are some jokes too offensive? Should comedians be canceled, or do we need to defend their freedom of speech as serving some greater function? Humor is central to human interaction, providing a source of entertainment and a way to bond socially, and it's a means of coping with life's challenges. Offensive jokes, which often touch on sensitive or taboo topics, inhabit a complex space in the realm of humor, capable of sparking both laugh and discomfort. On one hand, they can provoke thought and challenge norms. On the other hand, there's a risk of reinforcing harmful stereotypes and causing real harm. We can take a closer look at offensive jokes through the lens of philosophy and explore their justification, effectiveness, and the potential for harm, and the other considerations of freedom of speech and the impact that comedians have, especially in reflecting and shaping social narratives. Understanding offensive jokes requires delving into theories of humor that explain why people find certain things funny. The relief theory, championed by thinkers like Freud or Spencer, suggests that humor serves as a release of psychological tension. Freud proposed that jokes allow individuals to express suppressed thoughts and feelings that are socially acceptable. Offensive jokes may thus serve as an outlet for repressed emotions tied to taboo subjects and provide a form of positive catharsis. Another theory, the superiority theory associated with philosophers like Plato, Aristotle, or Hobbes, posits that humor arises when feelings of superiority emerges and laughter coincides with this perceived inferiority or misfortune of others. An offensive joke then creates a sense of unity among in-groups by ridiculing out-groups, thereby elevating the joke teller and their audience. The final theory, the incongruity theory attributed to thinkers like Kant or Schopenhauer, explains humor as a product of recognizing unexpected or incongruent elements in thought. Offensive jokes often subvert social norms, sparking laughter through the shock or surprise that comes with crossing these boundaries. Now that we have a couple theories on why offensive jokes make us laugh, we can take a closer look at whether this is ethical or right or wrong. Let's look at the three prominent ethical theories. First, a basic form of consequentialism, say classical utilitarianism in the form of Mill. His harm principle suggests that individuals should be free to act as they wish, provided they don't harm others. This intuitive ethical principle can be applied to offensive jokes, and it implies that they might be justifiable if they don't lead to tangible harm, though defining harm becomes challenging when it considers psychological and social impacts in the second order. Deontological theories, like that coming from Kant, might value certain rules and rights. For example, freedom of speech or expression might be understood as a fundamental right, making offensive jokes a legitimate form of challenging social norms. Finally, the virtue ethicists, like Aristotle, might be on the fence and say offensive jokes need to be analyzed in terms of how they relate to the flourishing of virtues in the individual and whether it is conducive to them. The three major normative ethical theories don't have a simple solution for whether offensive jokes are right or wrong, and this is only natural since it's a vexing topic and very controversial in today's landscape. The conclusion seems to be the ethics of offensive jokes often depends on context and intent. Generally, a joke that critiques society in an offensive way or that offends others may be more acceptable than one aimed at, say, belittling or marginalizing individuals or groups. Offensive jokes seem to resonate with audiences for different reasons. People are often drawn to the forbidden, and humor provides a safe space to broach sensitive topics without overtly breaking social rules. These jokes evoke strong emotional responses, making them memorable or impactful. Laughter together over a taboo subject can foster a sense of solidarity among those who share a similar perspective, reinforcing a shared understanding of the world. Audiences can seek offensive jokes in order for positive purposes like critiquing certain outdated norms, but they can also seek them for negative purposes like belittling or reinforcing certain stereotypes or prejudices. Albert Bandura's social learning theory suggests that individuals learn behavior and attitudes through observations and imitation. Consequently, exposure to offensive jokes that rely on stereotypes can shape perceptions and reinforce biases in a negative way. Media studies have supported this theory, positing that prolonged exposure to particular media and the norms associated with it can alter an individual's perception of reality. Repeated exposure to offensive humor can normalize prejudiced views and make discriminatory behavior appear acceptable. This humor can also contribute to the othering and ostracization of certain groups, framing them as fundamentally different or inferior, and this can erode empathy and justify unequal treatment in society. But there's ultimately a tension between free speech and the potential harm in society in offensive jokes. In a democratic society like the US, freedom of speech is often protected by law, like the First Amendment, though this right is not absolute, and it has limitations on speech that incites violence, constitutes hate speech, or defamation. From this view, we can use the normative ethical theories again to justify the other side of the argument. For example, utilitarian ethics, which in simple terms prioritizes the actions that maximize happiness for the greatest number of people, might deem offensive jokes to cause significant harm or distress as morally wrong. Deontological ethics, based on duties, could view jokes that disregard respect for others as inherently unethical. Virtue ethics, which characterizes value of character, might suggest that a virtuous person would prioritize empathy and avoid humor that harms others. The challenge is identifying which jokes are harmful, inherently disrespectful, or undermine the development of social virtues. Comedians have a significant role in this conversation. Satire historically has been used by comedians to challenge authority and highlight social flaws. Comedians ultimately choose the material that they present, and those who employ offensive humor do so with an awareness of their impact. Unskilled and sloppy comedians do this ineffectively, but skillful and successful comedians can have a large influence on public discourse and shaping norms for positive moral change. But some comedians with large audiences might inadvertently share their views without being fully aware of their impact on society, and they might accidentally challenge harmful narratives or unintentionally reinforce them. For example, Lenny Bruce, active in the 50s and 60s, pushed boundaries on race, religion, and sexuality, facing arrests for obscenity, but laying the groundwork for greater comedic freedom. George Carlin questioned censorship and social norms, sparking both praise and controversy for his critiques of language and hypocrisy. Recently, Dave Chappelle comments on race, gender, and the LGBTQ+ community, and his material has sparked a lot of critique. On the one hand, they reinforce harmful stereotypes. On the other, they spark a important conversation that needs to be held in society. These comedians demonstrate humor's complex role in addressing difficult topics. Their work provokes essential questions about the boundaries of comedy, the responsibility of artists, and the impact their messages have on society. Offensive jokes inhabit a paradox in humor and ethics. They can drive social critique and push audiences to confront uncomfortable truths, but they also risk perpetuating harmful stereotypes and causing harms. While freedom of speech allows comedians and individuals to express themselves, this freedom comes with the responsibility to consider potential consequences. Comedians, especially those with significant influence, play a powerful role in shaping social narratives and are capable of either challenging or reinforcing stereotypes. Cancel culture has become a significant force in shaping public discourse, particularly impacting comedians whose craft relies on pushing boundaries and addressing these controversial topics. In an era where online communities hold influential figures accountable for perceived offensive jokes, comedians often find themselves walking on a tightrope. Some argue that cancel culture stifles freedom of expression and the artistic process, which involves being able to make mistakes. A joke taken out of context or made years ago can resurface and lead to calls for boycotts and career consequences. But comedians aren't perfect. We all make moral blunders, and we need to evolve our ethical stances. And we're all very forgiving of our past selves, but not so much in others, which is problematic. Those in favor of canceling argue that humor should not come at the expense of marginalized groups, and that comedians have a responsibility to evolve with social values. It's a question that cuts to the core of the function of comedians. Are they mere entertainers? Are they educators? Are they reformers of social norms? It's a complicated question, and there's a tension between the balance between freedom of speech and accountability. And as comedians become more popular, they will be increasingly scrutinized in the cultural landscape, but we need to approach this with a more nuanced analysis. The debate over offensive jokes highlights the broader social tensions between freedom of expression and social responsibility. As audiences and creators continue to navigate this landscape, we need to appreciate the power of words to both harm and heal.